There is a line in the Twin Cities where the city simply stops, not at a fence or a boundary sign, but at the top of a slope, where the suburb runs out of level ground and the land falls away into a valley far too large for the river at the bottom of it. I am starting at the top of that slope this evening, and I am going to ride down into it and follow the water southwest until the light goes. This is the Minnesota River Valley, on the southern edge of Bloomington, Minnesota. The river below runs northeast here toward its meeting with the Mississippi. The route ahead follows the valley floor, passes underneath one of the busiest highway crossings in the state, and ends on a steel bridge that has been standing over this water for more than 100 years. Almost everything here is shaped by a flood that stopped thousands of years ago. The ride ahead is a little under 2 hours of daylight, ending in the dark. The drop is the first thing you feel. The trail tips downward, the temperature falls a few degrees, and the sound of traffic thins out behind the trees. The light changes too. Up on the flat it was still full daylight. Down here the trees close in overhead and everything goes a shade cooler and greener. This is a descent of maybe 30 meters, which does not sound like much until you notice that it is the difference between a suburb and a floodplain. About 13,000 years ago, the retreating ice sheet dammed a body of meltwater across what is now Manitoba, Ontario, North Dakota, and Minnesota. Glacial Lake Agassiz. At its greatest extent, it held more water than all 5 of the Great Lakes combined. It was held in place by ice, and ice is temporary. When it failed, the water had to leave, and it left to the south. The outflow became Glacial River Warren, and it cut a valley straight across the state with a force that is genuinely difficult to imagine. The first major incision came around 11,500 years ago. The river returned in pulses after that, roughly between 9,600 and 8,200 years ago, deepening the trench each time it came back. And then it stopped and left this. A flat floor a mile or more across in places, with a modest river wandering somewhere in the middle of it. It is worth stopping on that for a moment because the scale is the whole point. A river valley is normally cut by its river slowly over a very long time. This one was not. This one was cut fast by something enormous and then abandoned. Geologists call the Minnesota River an underfit stream. That means the river flows through a valley far too large to have been carved by it. The trench runs roughly 45 meters deep at its mouth and about 70 meters deep near Mankato. What you are looking at is not a river valley in the ordinary sense. It is a drain, built for a volume of water that no longer exists, now occupied by a river that could never have made it. Those slopes on either side are the walls of the cut. Everything above them is the old land surface. Everything below is what the flood took away. You can read the height of the old flood off the land itself. The trail sits down on the floor. The houses sit up on the rim. Between them is a wooded slope that nobody built on because it was too steep, and that accident of gradient is most of the reason there is anything green left down here at all. What filled the bottom afterward is floodplain forest, and it is a specific and increasingly uncommon kind of woodland. Silver maple, cottonwood, willow, and elm on ground that expects to be underwater part of the year. More than 100 bird species use floodplain forest of this type for nesting, feeding, and as a place to stop and rest partway through a very long journey. It is also nationally a habitat in retreat. Floodplain forest depends on a river being allowed to flood, and most large rivers are no longer allowed to. Riding through it at ground level, the thing you notice is that it is loud. Not with traffic, with birds. Cottonwoods do a particular thing in wind that you only hear in bottomland, a dry rattling hiss quite unlike the sound of maples up on the rim. And because the ground is wet for part of the year, the undergrowth is dense right up to the edge of the path. There is a reason for that. This valley sits inside the Mississippi Flyway, the migration route that runs along the Mississippi, the Missouri, and the Lower Ohio, carrying birds each spring and autumn between breeding grounds in Canada and wintering grounds in the Gulf of Mexico, Central America, and South America. More than 30% of North America's water birds and shorebirds move along it. A flyway is not a corridor birds fly down in one go. It is a chain of places to land, feed, and recover. Remove enough of the links and the chain stops working, no matter how good the ends of it are. A shallow lake and a floodplain forest on the edge of a major city is exactly the kind of link that usually gets drained and built on. This one did not, and here is why that matters. A shallow lake sitting in a floodplain on the edge of a metropolitan area is historically a lake with a very short future. It is flat, it is close to everything, and it is not deep enough to be difficult to fill. The water beside the trail is Long Meadow Lake, a long, shallow backwater lying against the left bank of the river. The unit of protected land around it runs to about 2,400 acres, and it is the most visited part of the refuge it belongs to. Shallow water like this warms fast, grows food fast, and feeds enormous numbers of birds. Long Meadow is the kind of water that looks like very little and does an enormous amount of work. The trail runs right along the edge of it for a long stretch, which is a rare thing to be given this close to a city. On a bike, you cover the length of it in a few minutes, which gives you a slightly unfair sense of how big it is. On foot, it would take most of an evening. The far shore stays the same distance away for a surprisingly long time. None of this was empty ground. This valley held Dakota villages, and the reason is the same reason the birds are here. Shallow lakes, a river, floodplain timber, and a sheltered valley floor below a windy prairie. The village site recorded near the mouth of 9 Mile Creek and Long Meadow Lake is among the oldest documented on this river, appearing in the record as early as 1823. Further along the valley, around 1750, a leader recorded as Black Dog established a permanent village between the river and the lake that still carries his name. His people were Mdewakanton, one of the Dakota bands. When Europeans first reached this stretch, an estimated 250 people were living there. That lake, and the power plant that later took the same name, are now the everyday markers people use for the area without much thought about where the name came from. And it was close to everything that was about to happen. Black Dog Village stood less than 4 miles from the mouth of the Minnesota River, which put it almost within sight of Fort Snelling, the garrison built at the confluence, and the reference point from which this entire territory was surveyed, measured, and eventually taken. Before it was a refuge, before it was a park, this valley was a road. It is the flattest, easiest line of travel for a very long way in any direction. Every route through this part of the state, for as long as there have been routes, has wanted to use it. Foot trails, then wagon roads, then rail, then highway. The valley does not care who is traveling. It just offers the only flat line for miles. In 1851, 2 treaties, Traverse des Sioux and Mendota, opened roughly 24 million acres to settlement. The Dakota villages along this river were pushed off the valley floor within a few years. The terms of those treaties and the way they were obtained have been disputed from the moment they were signed. Within a generation, the valley floor had gone from being lived in to being surveyed, sold, farmed, and eventually crossed by a highway. And then the people who arrived ran into the same problem the people before them had. The valley is easy to travel along. It is hard to travel across. A valley that is a highway lengthwise is a wall crosswise. Half a mile of soft floodplain, then open water, then another half mile of floodplain, then a steep climb out the other side. For anyone trying to get from Minneapolis to the country south of the river, that was the obstacle. The first answer was a boat. In 1849, a ferry began running across the Minnesota River at Bloomington, and it kept running for 4 decades. A ferry sets the rhythm of everything around it. It runs in daylight, it stops in ice, it stops in flood, and everyone on both banks arranges their day around it. It also fixes the location of everything else. Roads bend toward a ferry. In 1889, the ferry was replaced by a bridge, and a crossing here at Cedar Avenue dates from that same period. The first structure was timber. Timber over a river that floods is a maintenance problem with a fixed ending. The sun is getting low now, and the whole valley is turning the color it turns for about 20 minutes at the end of a clear day. This is the hour this valley is worth riding for. The bluffs go warm on one side, the water picks up the whole sky, and the temperature starts dropping fast enough that you notice it on your hands. So in 1920, the timber structure was demolished and replaced with steel. What went up was a camelback through truss, a design where the top cord steps down in a series of angled segments toward each end, giving the bridge its humped profile. It is a form that has almost entirely disappeared from this state. The camelback is not decoration. Stepping the top cord down toward the ends puts the steel where the load actually is, which was how you got a long span out of a limited amount of metal. You hear the next part of the story before you see it. It arrives as a low, continuous hum that does not rise or fall the way traffic on a surface road does. It is the sound of a road that never stops, laid across a valley that used to be crossed by boat. Cedar Avenue is also Minnesota Highway 77, and the modern crossing carries it over this valley on a structure of a completely different order. Concrete piers, multiple lanes, tens of thousands of vehicles a day, and a deck high enough that the floodplain underneath, it is simply irrelevant to the traffic above. It is the single busiest thing for miles in any direction, and from down here you cannot see any of it. The trail goes underneath. For about 15 seconds you are riding in the shadow of the 20th century solution to this valley, and then you are back out in the trees. The contrast is the thing. Above, 6 lanes moving at 70. Below, a paved path, a chain link fence, and a heron somewhere off in the reeds. The two exist about 20 meters apart and have almost nothing to do with each other. Which leaves this stretch of river with 2 answers to the same question, standing a short distance apart. One built to get a county across the water, one built to get a metropolitan area over the top of it without noticing the water at all. There is one more layer here, and it is the strangest of them. Not everything flat and wet down here got that way on its own, and one stretch of it has a history that has nothing to do with either glaciers or wildlife. Some of the still water in this valley is not natural at all. From 1926 until the 1950s, the Izaak Walton League, a conservation organization, dug and ran a set of rearing ponds down here, raising fish to stock lakes across the state. What looks like quiet backwater is in places a piece of disused industrial infrastructure that the marsh has taken back. The word to hold onto is rearing. These were not natural ponds that happened to hold fish. They were built basins, managed as production. The ponds are still there, connected by an interpretive trail, and they are now valued for precisely the opposite reason they were built. Not for what can be taken out of them, but for what will settle on them. Because the way this valley was thought about changed completely, and it changed within living memory. For most of the century after the treaties, the working assumption about a floodplain this close to a growing city was that it was land waiting for a use. Drain it, fill it, build on it, or run something through it. That assumption is what changed. In 1976, the Minnesota Valley National Wildlife Refuge was established. That is late. This is not a place that was set aside before development arrived. It was set aside after, in a metropolitan area that had already grown around it, at a moment when it could plausibly have gone the other way. By 1976, there was already a metropolitan airport, an interstate system, and a shopping district within a few miles of this water. What it protects is a corridor rather than a block. More than 15,000 acres running close to 70 miles along the Minnesota River, from Bloomington southwest to Henderson. It is one of only 14 refuges in the country designated a regional priority urban wildlife refuge, which is a formal way of saying that its whole point is being reachable. And it is. You can be in the middle of this on a bike, on a weekday evening without planning a trip. That is not a small design decision. Most protected land in this country is protected partly by being difficult to get to. This is the opposite bet, and the bet is that a place people can actually reach is a place people will actually defend. Over 200 bird species are recorded here in the course of a year, and more than 100 of them nest here. That is the return on not draining a shallow lake on the edge of a city. It is also the reason the riding is what it is. The soundtrack down here is not scenery. It is a working migration corridor with a city built around it. The trail is running out now, and there is one structure left. The valley narrows toward the water, the trees drop back, and the sky opens up ahead in a way it has not done for the whole ride. The 1920 bridge did not survive as a road. Inspections found it in poor structural condition, and it was closed to vehicles in 1993. 9 years later, it was closed to everyone, including people on foot. A rare steel truss sat over this water for years with a fence at each end, going quietly to pieces. Rare structures do not usually survive that stage. Once a bridge is fenced off, it stops being infrastructure and becomes a liability with a maintenance bill. And the ordinary ending is demolition. Then it was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 2013, and that listing changed what was possible. The city and the Refuge rebuilt it together, working on the foundation, the beams underneath, the railings and the metal connections, while deliberately preserving the shape of the thing. It reopened, not as a road, but as a way for people to walk and ride out over the water. And this is it. Steel overhead, the valley opening out on both sides, and the sky doing the thing it does over open water at the end of a clear day. A bridge that was condemned, fenced off, and then argued back into existence, carrying nobody across but the people who came here on purpose. It is also, quietly, the best argument in the valley for keeping difficult old things. A trench cut by a lake that drained 13,000 years ago. Villages that were here for centuries and then were not. A ferry, a timber bridge, a steel bridge, and a highway that ignores all three. Fish ponds turned back into marsh. And a refuge declared late in the middle of a city, which is the only reason any of this is still here to ride through. If you want more rides like this one, with the history that goes with them, subscribe and come along.